Hello and welcome to Fixing South Sudan, your ideas for building the new nation. I am Deng Bol. Hello and welcome to Fixing South Sudan, your ideas for building the new nation. I am Deng Bol. This week on Fixing South Sudan, a detour into the memory lanes of the world of the Red Army of South Sudan. The SPLM used to regard the Red Army as the seeds of the future, but have the seeds germinated to save the movement from the wounds of self-affliction? And can the Red Army Foundation fix South Sudan? Joining us in the show is Deng Bol Aruei Bol, the chairman of the South Sudan Red Army Foundation. It's our pleasure to welcome him on Fixing South Sudan for the first time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Very good, thank you. Good morning.
When we talk about the South Sudan Red Army, it has precedent historically. Who are the Red Army of South Sudan?
The Red Army of South Sudan are young people who found themselves in the camps and in makeshift towns of the SPLM, SPLA during the liberation struggle. Some of them went to the bush with their parents. Some of them were conscripted. Some of them were part of the mobilization that was meant to bring children together so that the movement can open schools for them. So these are young people who definitely decided to be part of the liberation struggle, having seen the devastation that was done to their villages by the Khartoum government or all the successive regimes of the Khartoum government of the 1980s and 90s.
The Red Army have been part and parcel of the liberation struggle. What was the contribution of the Red Army?
Yes, I usually say that the history of the Red Army is as old as the history of the movement, because from the beginning, that's when the movement realized that there were many young people in the SPLM and SPLA. So in the 1980s, as early as 84, 85, when there were children, and when the division of Mormor was being trained, these children were isolated and actually made a battalion within the division of Mormor. And that's when some of them who were trained with Mormor and Kazuk were the ones that were actually sent to Cuba, over 600 of them. Those who remained as part of the division of Mormor, and some of them also became part of the division of Kazuk, and they participated in the war as early as the 1980s. So the Red Army did not start in the late 1980s or in the early 1990s. It started as early as 84, 85.
The leaders of the SPLM, they used to talk about you as the seeds of the nation, which is the motto for the Red Army, seeds of the nation.
Exactly.
And General Salva Kiir Mayardit, the President of the Republic of South Sudan, is the patron of the Red Army Foundation. So when they used to talk about you being the seeds, and now we have achieved the nation, are you the seeds of the nation?
Well, it depends on who is looking at it, because what we expected as Red Army is that after the liberation, and I'm saying between 1983 to 2005, from 2005 there should have been a program for the Red Army, not only for those who participated in the Red Army program during the war, but there should have been a continuation of the program in order to continue to bring up new seats, knowing that the ones that were developed by the SPLM, SPLA in the 1980s and 90s are no longer seats, but people or seeds that have been planted, watered, nurtured, and germinated. So it is time for them to be eaten and make new seeds out of them. That's what we expected.
Let's put it this way.
Unfortunately, there has not been any program of the Red Army.
What was the SPLM vision for the Red Army, and what is the reality now?
The vision of the SPLM, SPLA was that if this war was going to take a very long time, over 20 years, then majority of the people who started the war of 104, 105, and the other battalions of Jamus, Tiger, Utimsa, going to Koryom, majority of them were going to be wasted by the war. Majority of them were going to die. Majority of them were going to be wounded, and majority of them were going to eventually abandon the movement and all that. So what the SPLM, SPLA had actually planned is that if all the other divisions that were mobilized in the villages and brought for training and all that, majority of them not educated, were not able to finish the war, then what the SPLM wanted to do was to engage children that can be given military and political ideology of the liberation struggle, so that later on, 10 years, 20 years, when they are adults, they're the ones to carry forward the movement. Even if the movement takes 50 years, these are the people who can continue the movement, not the ones who started the movement. And the SPLM, SPLA leadership at that time saw that, even from the experience of Anyanya 1, is that if you look at it, majority of the people that were engaged in Anyanya 1, people like Dr. John Garang, people like President Salva Kiir and all these, are people who had had schooling. They had gone to school, and that's why they were able to continue the second war. Otherwise, they would have not gone if they were just people who were in the villages. They would have thought that the war is over if they had no political and military ideology of the liberation. They would have gone back to the villages and lived there. But because they had gone to school and because they had oriented themselves with the ideals of the liberation, they had to go back to the bush and start another one and continue it to the end. So they wanted to actually bring up a generation that is more like the generation that was like the Red Army of Anyanya 1, people who were young but had some sort of schooling and had also received military and political training.
So the vision was correct, and do you say it has been squandered?
Well, in a way, it has not been there, because my issue here is that the Red Army is widely recognized and supported and adored and loved and appreciated. Unfortunately, without a program of the Red Army that is recognized by the government. I'm not saying the government does not support the Red Army or does not appreciate the Red Army, but there has not been a tangible program of the Red Army in the name of the Red Army that is spearheaded by the government, and there is no way, the government has never designed a way to engage the Red Army. We have a lot of Red Army. It is, I want to compare it with planting a seed, watering it, raising this seedling until it is all germinated, and you literally refuse to harvest it. This is basically what has happened to the Red Army. Red Army are over the world, all over the world. Over 10,000 of them are in diaspora, people that are very educated, very skilled, very connected. And here also in South Sudan, there are a lot of Red Army who are capable of doing a lot of things. I know a lot of Red Army are in the system and in their respective positions and works and doing a lot of things. But what I'm trying to say here is that there should be a program that engage the Red Army directly, so that they feel that the education that was given to them, the orientation that was given to them has not actually gone to waste. And I have always told our leaders that it will be a complete waste if the Red Army is not engaged and used for the purpose that it was intended for.
Let's put the attention on the Red Army Foundation, which was started a few years back. And what is the Red Army in the current form? What are the various organs that represent the Red Army?
Well, when we started the Red Army Foundation, we only had 3 objectives, and it was very simple. We wanted to make sure that we serve our members. Every organization that is membership is that the number one purpose is to make sure that the welfare of its members is catered for. So we wanted to serve the members of the Red Army to make sure that anyone who has survived the war is cared for, that we politically, militarily, socially, economically advocate for them. Even if we don't provide services and we speak on their behalf, that is the purpose of our organization, and that's our number one objective. The second objective is to make sure that the legacy, the patriotic legacy of the Red Army is preserved, because I have never seen this happen in any war where children that are as young as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old takes on the responsibilities of adults, okay, and excelled. When we were in all the camps, whether IDP camps or refugee camps, we contributed immensely to the success of the SPLA. First, when we were young, we became the economic source of the movement, because it's our food and the sympathy of the international community that sustained the movement. And the other thing is that majority of us who became of age, who became 15, 16, 17, or even turned 20, were conscripted into the SPLA and became the backbone of the SPLA, especially in the 1990s when things were really bad for the SPLA. They participated in various wars all over South Sudan. So, and then when in the early 2000s, when we actually went abroad, some of us went to the US and went to Canada and Australia, we became the Lost Boys. At that time, the SPLA or the SPLM or the leadership, for that matter, had no diplomats. We were the first diplomats of their movement, and we did a very good job. Last objective is for us to participate in nation building, to help our government and our people in realizing nation building. That's our third objective. So we care for our members and we make sure that the history of the Red Army is not forgotten and that is passed on to the next generation, and that we fulfill the mandate that was given to us by making sure that we support the government, the SPLM, which is the ruling party, and the people of the Republic of South Sudan in offering what I call participatory development, so that we all participate in it and nation building. Thank you.
Let's take a break from here.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fixing South Sudan, your ideas for building the new nation. I am Deng Bol. Welcome back to Fixing South Sudan, your ideas for building the new nation. I am Deng Bol, and with us is Deng Bol Aruei Bol, the chairman of the South Sudan Red Army Foundation. It seems that the foundation is facing a lot of challenges. You have lofty ideals that you are not able to realize. What are the challenges of the foundation?
Well, the challenges of the Red Army Foundation at this particular time is us actually meeting the demands of our people, the expectations of our people. Uh, Red Army are very emotional about the Red Army. They love it, they lived it, they experienced it. And majority of the Red Army have been Red Army members for the last 30-something years. And there are a lot of expectations. For them, it is time to basically benefit from the dividends of peace, and at the same time getting recognized and rewarded for the work done. But all these things have not been forthcoming. One of the challenges that we have as the Red Army Foundation is the misconception that because it is Red Army and because of all the things that the Red Army had done during the war, the Red Army should have everything that it needs, especially from their government. Because one, it's their government, it is the Salva Kiir that they knew in the bush. It is the James Waniga, it is the Daniel Owit, it is the Kuala Manyang, and all the other people that they knew during the war. So if it is their government, why shouldn't they have everything that they want to have in life? Why shouldn't they have support that they need? Why shouldn't they easily participate in developing this country if they have ideas? Unfortunately, sometimes these things become very difficult because, one, it's not about the Red Army, it's about the citizens of the Republic of South Sudan. So the Red Army find themselves overshadowed.
You feel shortchanged by the leadership of the movement. In other words, sometimes betrayed.
Well, I wouldn't say betrayal. I would just say that maybe priorities are no longer there, that the people that were supposed to play a role in a certain way are kind of like, forgotten. And we can talk about what happened between the youth and the Red Army. During the war, there was no youth. It was the Red Army that was the youth of the movement. But in the late 1990s, while the Red Army was busy fighting here, another program started in diaspora called the Youth. And the Youth was what was actually imported into South Sudan and put over the Red Army. So basically, you feel like the Red Army was only used for the war, forgetting that there was a lot of investment that was put into the Red Army that actually, people need to get, the movement needs to get return on its investment during the war.
If the Red Army are in the thousands, well educated, and they are integrated into the society, it means you have the power, the creativity to be able to achieve your goals and objectives that you have set out for yourself.
Yes.
Why are you not doing this? And is leadership, your leadership, part and parcel of the problems of the Red Army?
Well, I think one of the problems that majority of the Red Army have is that when they were brought up in the movement, they did not do anything on their own. They were always told what to do. They were mobilized, organized, and given directions. They were told to go to school. They were told to go to war. They were told to do this and that. That kind of mentality still exists. And this is also some of the things that manifest themselves when you are raising a child. When you raise a child in a certain way, then this child must continue that way. Otherwise, it's very difficult to reprogram what was already done. The reason I'm saying that is because the Red Army right now needs a lot of guidance. And the reason why we are not actually accomplishing more here is the lack of leadership. I'm talking about our leaders coming together and they say, this is
your
our Red Army.
The Red Army, or
I'm talking about the leaders of the country, because the leaders of the country are naturally the leaders of the Red Army.
What about the internal leadership of the Red Army? In fact, let me put the idea that you are the chairman of the Red Army Foundation, and you are not a resident of South Sudan. You are a resident of Thailand. So you are leading the Red Army by satellite. So you are not able to effectively nurture the Red Army. Can you blame yourself instead of the leadership of the movement?
Well, I don't think I'm not doing anything because I regularly travel out of the country. I have been very, very effective. And even since I moved back to South Sudan, in 2007, going to 2008, I lived here in and out of South Sudan until I picked up this responsibility in 2013 and started being the chairman of the Red Army Foundation. Since I started, I'm married and my wife lives in Thailand. And it is very difficult for her to actually stay here since she's also not South Sudanese and she's no
your
job here.
personal commitments not affecting your leadership commitment?
They are actually not affecting that because I have given 100% of my time, all my ideas, whether business or other creative ideas, to the foundation. And that's why I've always been accessible. And that's why even if I go to Thailand, I can only go maybe for 2 weeks or 1 month and then come back and then end up staying here for 3 months. And what do you think brings me back? It is actually the Red Army Foundation because I do not have any personal businesses that I do in South Sudan. And I don't maintain a job. I have not maintained any paid position in South Sudan since I came back from the United States in 2007. And it is because I devoted myself to doing things that are of common good to the people of South Sudan until I found what I thought was my calling, and that is to serve the Red Army. Because when I came back, I did not see any fitting position that was good for me. But when we started the Red Army Foundation, and then I asked the Red Army to give me this position, I thought this could be the only way I can serve South Sudan, because by making sure that the Red Army is revived, then now you begin into tapping into the potential of the Red Army so that the Red Army can actually begin to build this nation, because that was the only mandate, that let us go to war, and when this war is over, you, the Red Army, with the education that we are giving you, with the military orientation that we are giving you, with the political ideology, you will be able to build this nation. And this is what we're still fighting for, because in order to do something, Mading, you need an opportunity to do that. If you are not given an opportunity to do that, I can be the smartest person ever, but if I'm not given the platform and the position to apply myself, I will not be able to do anything. And this is what we fight for.
Are the Red Army an exceptional generation in your
Very exceptional, because at this particular time, let's talk about education. Per se.
Education is what sets them apart.
Yes, it's one of them, and then experience. Experience, and I'm going, yes, skills and all this, and they are the only people who can eloquently, articulate the vision of the SPLM, SPLA, from inception until today, and they still know what really needs to be done. The problem is that if they don't...
different from the leadership of the movement?
Well, they are not very much different from the leadership. The only difference here is that what the Red Army knows now is different, because these people are well-traveled. They got their education. Majority of them got their education outside the country.
Do they believe in democracy?
The Red Army, yes, they believe in democracy. There is absolutely anyone who has ever gone to school, and especially if you have gone to school in the West, or in any country where democracy is exercised, you are bound to believe in democracy.
Do you personally, as the chairman of the Red Army, believe in democracy?
I do believe
Why
in democracy.
Why have you been in the same position for more than 5 years?
Well, Mading,
without elections?
I wish you would challenge me. I would call the Red Army all over South Sudan and they will come. I am chairman of the Red Army Foundation today, not because this is what I insist on every day. It is because I have devoted so much time to the point, I really wish somebody could come and challenge me and tell me exactly if they can do better than me.
But how can they challenge you if you have not been holding elections?
Well, the elections were held, and that's why I was elected
Only
again.
Once?
No. Then that means you've not been coming to the Red Army events.
So you have been re-elected?
Yes, re-elected on the 20th of December 2016. You see? And you don't even know, because you are not there.
With few membership of the Red Army.
I mean, we could not hold it on the street. These are elections. These are elections. And by the way, the Red Army constitutions now dictates that the people who elect the chairman are members of the board of trustees, because we did not want the Red Army to look like a political party where we have rallies, and then you begin to attract wrong elements, and where people will destroy the fabric of what the Red Army actually is.
Few thoughts across.
Yes.
One is that there is confusion about the identity of the Red Army. Are they a political party? Are they strong members of the SPLM? What are you?
Okay, during the liberation struggle, we had SPLM as a political party, as a political movement, and we had the SPLA as a military wing, and all this. And then later on, we had CANS, the civil administration of the new Sudan, and all that. Okay, this one giant multi-facet organization was running the affairs of the movement. What we did as Red Army Foundation is that we created the foundation to preserve our legacy. At the same time, we created what we call the SPLM Red Army League. And that is, if you are somebody who wants to grow politically and you want to participate in the political affairs of this nation, and you are Red Army who still support the SPLM, then you go to the SPLM Red Army League, where you can participate just like we have the SPLM Youth League. It is actually, SPLM Red Army League is one of the leagues that has been recognized by the SPLM.
So you are 100% members of the SPLM?
Yes.
And you are unapologetic about that identity?
We can't go anywhere else, because what we have known all this time has been SPLM. What is driving or what is chasing the Red Army out of the SPLM right now is frustration, because people who work at the SPLM right now are given the task, to shepherd the flocks of the SPLM, do not know the history, do not even know what Red Army is. And we cannot take that insult, because this SPLM is ours. Even if we go to SPLM and chase everyone away, it's our house. There is nowhere else. Where else can we go to? So I usually tell the leaders that, you better think about the Red Army, or this is going to bring a very serious confrontation in the future.
Can the Red Army Foundation fix South Sudan?
Of course, absolutely. I believe if given a chance, if well positioned, if it's strategically positioned, the Red Army in all fields and sectors of South Sudan can actually fix South Sudan.
What can you do for nation building?
What we can do for nation building is, for instance, right now, as Red Army, we have come to the position of power. You have a lot of people from the Red Army background, people who were very young during the liberation struggle, even if they were maybe not conscripted as Red Army. People like the CDF, our current CDF, Jong Riak, Gabriel Jong Riak, identifies with the Red Army. And if you talk about the people who were trained with the divisions of Mormor and even Kazuk, you have our IGP, General Majaga Kech. He's Red Army, trained with Zazal and all that. The reason I'm mentioning this is, and then there are a lot of other Red Army in the position of power. The reason why I'm saying this, we are already doing it. We are fixing these problems.
You are fixing South Sudan?
We are fixing South Sudan.
Is South Sudan fixing you?
Well, that's one of the problems. South Sudan must actually fix us and bring us together, empower us so that we can all fix South Sudan. I wanted to give an example of the wonderful work that our current IGP is doing. You remember the stories of unknown gunmen, robberies and all this. It has gone down, and we fully support him. We stand by him.
Everywhere is doing a good job.
Yes, a lot of them.
It's a logical place to leave the discussion. Thank you
for
coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Che bourgeoisie ke garaj bai, etiel bourgeoisie na waye na woyong, panda gojon garang piorej. Ene bi awon, ene bi kalanye na bi sam, ene bi awon, ene bi kalanye na bi sam. Kartum di dena wijon, Kartum di dena wijon, chakping wade we shumalin we bourgeoisie chakping. Dictor John resina, nam resina, John garang resina. By Chityoga Dumpanda, and yes, by Jidom. Thank you very much. Very good.